My sister accused me of stealing her fiancé for talking to him at Christmas. She uninvited me from her wedding. But when he found out the truth, he canceled everything and told her, "I can't marry someone who treats their sister like this." She slapped me in front of everyone and lost her marriage forever. I'm 24 years old. I work from home as a freelance graphic designer, and basically my entire family hates me right now for something I didn't even do. Well, technically they hated me before, but now it's official and they have a concrete reason to blame me for everything. My sister Morgan, who's 29, was supposed to get married like a month and a half ago, but the wedding got canceled, and according to them, it's all my fault. The thing is, I wasn't even invited to that wedding, but that doesn't matter apparently, because somehow I'm the villain of this story. I guess I should start from the beginning so this whole mess makes sense. I grew up being basically the black sheep of my family, that person who never fits in no matter how hard they try. Morgan was always the perfect daughter, the golden child who did everything right, got good grades, had tons of friends, was super social and outgoing. I was the complete opposite. Since I was little, I had problems socializing. I'd get nervous in social situations, cry before going to birthday parties, that kind of stuff. My parents never took it seriously. They thought I was being dramatic or seeking attention, and basically told me to stop being so sensitive and to go out more. As if it were that easy. You know what I mean? The truth is, I have social anxiety disorder, something I discovered years later when I could finally go to therapy on my own. But back then, my parents didn't believe in that mental health stuff. For them, that was all nonsense, excuses from lazy people who didn't want to face life. So basically, I spent my entire adolescence feeling like a failure, while Morgan shined at everything she did. My parents went to all her events, her debate competitions, her theater performances, and with me it was like I barely existed. It's not that they actively mistreated me. I mean, they didn't hit me or anything like that, but they just ignored me. I was invisible in my own home. When I started college, like at 18, it was the first time I felt free. I moved to a dorm that was like 3 hours from my house, studied graphic design, and finally started going to therapy. My therapist was the first person who really listened to me and explained that what I had was something real, that I wasn't being dramatic or seeking attention, that it was a legitimate disorder that could be treated. I started taking medication, learned techniques to manage the anxiety, and honestly, my life improved a lot. But I also realized how toxic my relationship with my family was, so I started distancing myself little by little. After graduating, I got work as a freelancer, which is perfect for me because I can work from home without having to deal with offices full of people, and I moved to my own apartment like an hour from where my parents live. I stopped going to all the family gatherings, only showed up at Christmas and Thanksgiving, because my grandparents, who are the only decent people in my family, asked me to. Morgan had moved out too. She lived with a roommate in the city and worked in marketing or something. I don't know exactly because we never talked. On those rare occasions when we coincided at my parents' house, she basically ignored me or made passive-aggressive comments about how antisocial I was. Everything got worse last year. At Christmas dinner, I didn't want to go, honestly, but my grandparents insisted, and I didn't want to disappoint them because they've always supported me, so I went. Morgan brought her boyfriend, Sebastian, who's like 29 years old, same as her. I had seen him in Facebook photos but never in person. The guy was super nice to me, asked me about my work, seemed genuinely interested when I told him about some of my design projects, and didn't treat me like I was weird or like he was doing me a favor by talking to me, which is what the rest of my family did. He was literally just being a normal, decent person. But Morgan got furious. Not in that moment, but later, because Sebastian asked me if I could design a logo for a personal project he had, like a startup or something. I don't remember exactly what it was. I told him yes, to send me the details by email, and that was it. Completely innocent and professional conversation. But Morgan took it as me flirting with him, or something like that. The next day, she called me screaming, telling me to stop trying to steal her boyfriend, that I had always been a jealous and envious person, that I couldn't stand seeing her happy. I was in shock. Literally didn't even know what to say, because I had absolutely no romantic interest in Sebastian. I had just been friendly because he was friendly to me first. I tried to explain, but she didn't want to listen. She hung up on me and then blocked me on all social media. I thought, well, okay, if she wants to cut contact with me, fine. We never had a close relationship anyway. I continued with my life, working on my projects, going to therapy, spending time with my grandparents when I could. Like 6 months passed and I didn't hear anything from Morgan or my parents, which was completely normal for me because they almost never reached out anyway. Then one day, in June I think, my grandparents called to congratulate me on Morgan's engagement. I had no idea what they were talking about. What engagement? Turns out Sebastian had proposed like 2 months earlier and the whole family knew except me. Nobody had told me anything. My grandparents assumed I already knew, and that's why they were calling to comment on it. But no, I found out through them, not from my own sister or my parents. I felt like shit. Honestly, not because I particularly cared that Morgan was getting married, but because it became super clear that I wasn't part of the family. You know what I mean? It was like an official confirmation that I was completely excluded. Like 2 weeks after that conversation, Morgan called me. I didn't have her number saved because I had changed phones since the last time we talked, but when I answered, I recognized her voice immediately. She was using that condescending tone she always used with me, like she was doing me a huge favor by talking to me. She told me she needed to talk to me about the wedding, and I honestly thought she was going to invite me. That maybe she had realized she'd been unfair to me. But no. Basically, she called to officially uninvite me, even though she'd never invited me in the first place. She told me she had decided I couldn't go to her wedding because Sebastian clearly had feelings for me, that she had noticed it at Christmas dinner, that she couldn't risk me ruining her special day with my presence. I asked her if Sebastian knew she thought that, if he had said something to her, and she told me no, that he didn't know but that it was obvious, that the way he had talked to me and treated me was different from how he treated other people. I told her she was being ridiculous, that I had absolutely no interest in her fiancé and that he had just been polite to me, but she insisted that I had always been manipulative and that she wasn't stupid. She hung up on me again, and I was like, what just happened? It was so absurd it almost made me laugh. But it also hurt, because basically my sister had accused me of trying to sabotage her relationship when I literally hadn't done anything. I hadn't sent any messages to Sebastian, hadn't contacted him at all after Christmas, didn't have his social media. Nothing. But in Morgan's head, I was a threat for some reason I didn't understand. Like 3 weeks passed and I was continuing with my normal life, trying not to think too much about all that drama, when Morgan called me again. This time she sounded desperate, almost crying. She told me Sebastian had canceled the wedding, that he had told her he couldn't marry her because her family was cruel to me and he didn't want to be part of that. I was in complete shock. Morgan was begging me to help her, to go to the rehearsal dinner that was in 2 days, to pretend everything was fine and that I had never been uninvited from the wedding. She asked me to lie and tell Sebastian that I had always been invited, and that it had all been a misunderstanding. I told her no, that I wasn't going to lie for her, especially after how she had treated me. She became hysterical, yelled at me that I was being selfish and vindictive, that this was exactly what I wanted, to ruin her happiness. I told her that I hadn't done absolutely anything to cause this, that she alone had gotten herself into this problem with her paranoia and jealousy, and that it wasn't my responsibility to fix it. I hung up the phone and blocked her because I knew she was going to keep calling me. The next day, like at 10 in the morning, I was working at home when the doorbell rang insistently. I opened the door and there were my parents and Morgan, all three standing on my porch with furious faces. My parents started yelling at me immediately, telling me I was selfish. How could I do this to my sister? That I needed to fix this mess I had caused. I tried to explain to them that I hadn't caused anything, that Morgan was the one who uninvited me from her own wedding, but they didn't want to listen. My mom told me I had always been problematic, that I had always sought attention, and that now I was destroying my sister's life out of jealousy. I told them to leave my house, that I had nothing more to talk about with them, but Morgan started crying and begging me to please talk to Sebastian, to tell him everything was fine. I asked her why couldn't she just tell him the truth, admit she'd been unfair to me and apologize to him. She told me she had already tried, but Sebastian didn't believe her, that he thought the whole family mistreated me and that he didn't want to be part of a family like that. And the thing is, well, he was right, wasn't he? My family did mistreat me. They'd been doing it my whole life. I asked them to leave again and they finally did. But my parents told me this wasn't going to end here, that I was going to have to face the consequences of my actions. I had no idea what consequences those could be. Honestly, because I was already practically no contact with them anyway. That night, Sebastian sent me a message on Facebook, apologized for all the drama, and asked if we could talk. I accepted. We met at a cafe the next day. Sebastian told me everything from his perspective. He said that after Christmas dinner, Morgan had started acting weird about me, making comments about how I was trying to get his attention and stuff like that. He hadn't paid much attention at first, thought they were normal sister jealousy or something. But then Morgan told him she had decided not to invite me to the wedding, and he was like, "What?" It seemed super weird and cruel to him, especially because I hadn't done anything wrong. I'd just been nice to him. He started asking her more things about our family, and Morgan told him things very different from reality. Like that I was the one who had caused division in the family, that I had been cruel to her all my life, that my parents had tried to help me but I rejected them. Sebastian didn't quite believe her because he had seen how they treated me at that Christmas dinner, how they basically ignored me or made dismissive comments. He also thought it was suspicious that Morgan was so obsessed with the idea that he had feelings for me when he had literally just been polite. So when Morgan told him she had officially uninvited me, he told her he couldn't marry someone who treated their own sister like that, especially based on completely made-up accusations. I told him my version of the story, about my childhood, about the social anxiety my parents never took seriously, about how I was always the black sheep of the family. I showed him old messages from Morgan being cruel to me, told him about all the times my parents ignored me or minimized my problems. Sebastian told me it hurt him to know it had been that bad, and that he was sorry he hadn't supported me more openly at that Christmas dinner. I told him he didn't need to apologize, that he had no way of knowing the whole story at that moment. I asked him what was going to happen with the wedding, and he told me honestly he didn't know, that he loved Morgan but that he couldn't ignore this side of her he had seen. He told me he had given her an ultimatum, that if she didn't apologize to me sincerely and didn't try to fix her relationship with me, he wasn't going to marry her. I told him I didn't expect him to do that I didn't want to be the cause of them breaking up, but he insisted it wasn't my fault, that this was something between him and Morgan about values and about how to treat people. After talking with Sebastian for like an hour, we said goodbye and I went home thinking that maybe things would calm down, that Morgan would understand she'd been unfair to me and would try to fix things. But no. What happened was that like 2 days later, my parents and Morgan showed up at my house again, this time with Sebastian. Morgan asked if we could all come in to talk and I accepted, although I was already super tired of all this drama. We sat in my living room and Morgan started saying she had reflected and understood she'd been unfair to me, but her whole apology sounded super fake and rehearsed. My parents didn't say anything. They were just sitting there with serious faces. Sebastian looked at me like asking what I thought, and I simply told him the truth. I told him about the call where Morgan had uninvited me from the wedding, about how she had accused me of wanting to steal her boyfriend, about how my whole life I'd been treated like I didn't matter. Morgan exploded. She yelled at me that I was exaggerating everything, that I had always been dramatic, and that I was manipulating Sebastian against her. My parents finally spoke and basically sided with her, said I had always had a distorted perception of things because of my mental problems, that they had always loved me the same as Morgan, but I was the one who distanced myself. I told them that wasn't true, that they had never supported me when I needed them most, that they hadn't even told me about Morgan's engagement until I found out by accident through my grandparents. My mom told me they hadn't told me because they knew I was going to cause drama and would want to ruin Morgan's happiness. That hurt me so much because she was basically admitting they saw me as a problematic person without even giving me a chance to prove otherwise. Sebastian stayed quiet the whole time, just listening, and I could see on his face he was processing everything that was happening. Then Morgan did something I didn't expect. She got up and slapped me. Like that. She hit me in the face in front of everyone. My parents did nothing. Didn't stop her or say anything to her. Just sat there. I was in shock, with my face burning, and all I could say was for them all to leave my house immediately. Sebastian stood up right away, told Morgan he couldn't believe she had done that everything between them was over, that he didn't want to see her again. My parents started yelling at him that he was being manipulated by me, that I was the one who had caused all this, but Sebastian told them they had shown their true colors and that he'd seen enough. They all left and I stayed in my house crying, not so much because of the slap but because of everything, because of years of feeling invisible and unimportant, of confirming that my family really never loved me the way they should have. My grandparents called me the next day. They had heard what happened from Sebastian, because apparently he contacted them to tell them everything. They were furious with my parents and Morgan, told me they supported me completely, and that they regretted not intervening more when I was a child. The weeks after all that were weird. My parents sent me like 100 messages telling me everything, that I was selfish, that I had ruined my sister's life, that they would never forgive me. I blocked them all. Morgan also tried to contact me by every possible means, but I blocked her too. Sebastian sent me a message thanking me for being honest with him and telling me he had dodged a bullet, that he was sorry everything had exploded that way but was glad he'd found out before getting married. I thought that was the end of everything, but no. Like a month later, one night I was at home watching a movie when I heard noises outside. I went out to see what was happening, and my house, literally the whole front part, was covered in eggs. Someone had thrown like 3 dozen eggs at my house, on the windows, on the door, on the walls. I checked the security cameras I had installed after the first incident with my family, and there was Morgan clearly visible throwing eggs at my house. She wasn't alone. There was someone else with her, but I couldn't clearly see who it was. Besides vandalizing my house, Morgan also somehow got my new phone number, which only my grandparents and some friends had, and shared it in Facebook groups or something, because I started receiving messages from unknown numbers telling me horrible things, that I was a homewrecker, that I had destroyed my sister's happiness, even threats. I had to change my number again and increase security on all my social media. I sent Morgan a message from a temporary number, told her I had everything recorded on video, that if she kept harassing me, I was going to the police, and that I had enough evidence to get a restraining order against her. I don't know if it was because of that or because she finally got tired, but the harassment stopped. I haven't heard anything from her or my parents since then, and honestly, it's a relief. My grandparents stay in contact with me and tell me things occasionally. Like that, Morgan is living with my parents again, that Sebastian is dating someone new, things like that. Last week, my grandparents came to visit me and asked if I would ever consider reconciling with my family. I told them honestly, I don't know. That maybe at some point in the future, if they genuinely apologize and acknowledge how they treated me. But for now, I'm fine keeping my distance. My therapist has helped me process all this. To understand it's not my fault the wedding got canceled, that I'm not responsible for other people's decisions or the consequences of their own actions. I'm working on establishing healthy boundaries and not feeling guilty about prioritizing my mental health. I'm still working from home, doing my designs, and honestly, my life is peaceful now. Sometimes I feel lonely. Sure, because I basically lost my entire family except my grandparents, but I also feel more at peace than I've been in years. I don't have to deal with passive-aggressive comments, with being ignored, with feeling like I'm not enough. My grandparents invited me to spend Christmas with them this year at their house, just the 3 of us, and I accepted because I know it's going to be different, that it's going to be an environment where I actually feel welcome. And that's enough for now, I guess.